All right. Welcome to the camping. Welcome to our special broadcast of the camping show. I'm CW Getz.
And I'm Jesse Meany.
It is Friday, March 11th, 2022. And today we're coming to you live from Canoecopia 2022. It is right now outside, just because I do this, it is 17 degrees Fahrenheit. So we've lost a little heat. Surprise. I was just outside and it is breezy.
Yeah.
Extremely breezy.
Yeah, I'm not going out there.
No, not recommended. Well, today's segment is being brought to you by Rutabaga Paddle Sports, providing time on the water. With today, our special guest is Rob Kesselring. Jesse, could you tell us a little bit about Rob?
I can. Licensed wilderness guide Rob Kesselring has over 100 trips into the BWCA. He's led 23 canoe expeditions in northern Canada and Arctic Alaska. He's guided 19 Rio Grande Lower Canyon trips, 2 sea kayak trips in the Gunayala, and has paddled over 150 rivers worldwide, including Zambezi, Futolufu, and South Nahani. Rob is a scuba diver, a former bush pilot, and the CEO of Uncommon Seminars, LLC. Rob is also the author of 3 books and has published several articles in a number of magazines.
Well, with that, welcome to the show, Rob. How you doing?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
Great to have Canoecopia open again after 2 years of being canceled because of the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Totally agree. So, you having a good show so far?
Terrific. I just came off a show, kind of wild show. It's great.
Yeah, you've already given some presentations, right?
Yeah, I just finished one on. We got a little bogged down on pooping and peeing in the wilderness, but other than that,
Because that's always, you got to address those things.
yes, people think it's too indelicate to talk about, but everybody does it.
Right.
You
In
don't
an
want
environmentally responsible way, and fun way.
you don't want to talk about it until you have to. Right? It's like, oh my gosh, right?
It's too late.
It's too late. Absolutely.
So what other topics are you presenting for this year's Canoecopia?
Yeah, well, that wasn't really the title of
I love it.
That one was Tips from 1,000 Trips, How to Travel Like a Wilderness Guide. That was one I just did.
Okay.
And then I'm going to do one tomorrow and on Sunday, too, about traveling on the canoeing the Noatak River, one of the largest untouched watersheds in North America. It's north of the Arctic Circle in northern Alaska.
Oh.
And then I'm doing one more. They got me really working this year, and I'm going to be working. We're talking with Stu Osthoff. We're going to kind of butt heads about our different styles for canoe camping. Although he's a good friend, and he's the publisher of the Boundary Water Journal, kind of an authoritative publication 4 times a year on boundary water and Quetico paddling. And we're good friends, but we disagree on some things.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, now, can you tell us a little bit about what people can look forward to taking away from the presentations you're giving, each of them?
Well, really, I have 3 objectives when I do these presentations. One is to have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people here are gearing up for a season of paddling. They're geeked to see some of the people they paddled with in the past. I want to make it a fun program, so we try to fool around a little bit and have some fun. But if they don't leave one of my programs without learning something, I feel that they haven't made the most of it. So I really work hard to have some kind of content that maybe they haven't heard before, and maybe a little different twist on it. And that's one thing I focus on. And I think that last group definitely walked away with some new ideas.
I bet they did. That's cool.
Yeah, so what are some of the topics that you're presenting on?
Well, like I think I mentioned, we got a little bogged down on pooping and peeing in the wilderness, and I think that there's not enough information. I was guide for many years,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times I have. I'll be preface this with the fact that I have 5 grown daughters that I grew up with 2 sisters, so I'm a feminist through and through. But there is some reality that different anatomy between men and women, and there's just different ways that you need to make your time in the wilderness pleasurable. And when I used to talk to clients on the phone, eventually they would always come up with, especially if it was a novice camper, what do you do about bathroom in the boundary waters? Or what do you do about bathroom on your canoe trips? And so just walking through that with environmentally and a respectful way of doing what everybody does every day, but making it so that it's not leaving a mess for the next camper, and that it's not spoiling the environment. So that's what we talk about, and it's not so radical. I know the Boundary Waters. I can say this now because I'm no longer a guide in the Boundary Waters, but they'll want you to go 200 feet from the lake to go to the bathroom, and some people read that as, "Well, I'm going to go 200 feet from the lake to have a pee," and that means not only 200 feet, but you've got to go 200 feet past where you're going to have the pee, because you want to make sure you're not getting into water in that direction.
Yeah.
So, if some of my clients went 400 feet from camp to go pee, I'd never see them again. They need a GPS to find their way back to camp. So, we have to keep things in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, we talked about that. Cliff Jacobson and I both talked about that on our show, and he said the same thing. It's like, really the common sense thing really falls into play here more than, the 200 feet thing. And like he said, when he takes youngsters out there on trips and things like that, I said, you know what? These kids will get lost. It's one of those things where you can't do that. And so you would probably agree with that. Am I right?
Yeah, Cliff is a good friend of mine, and we usually see eye to eye on this one. He's got common sense, and that's what we need.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, let me ask this. How many years have you been speaking at Canoecopia?
This is my 10th year.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Well, happy. What is that? Congratulations.
Yeah.
It's a decade.
It's a decade, yeah.
Happy
Thank you.
decade. 10 years, yeah.
But they've got me in some big rooms this time, so I don't know. We'll see how I do Sunday, but I turned 70 this year, so we'll see. I'm not guiding anymore.
Well, congratulations on that. That's very good.
Yeah.
Well, good news and bad news about that. Good news is, the bad news is a lot of people come to this thing and they come up to see my booth every year and say, next year I'm going to go. Next year I'm going to Alaska. Or I'm going to,
Right.
and I have to tell them this year, well, you waited too long.
That's right.
I'm not doing it. And the good news, I can be a little more candid, because when you have a guide license, you have to just go right by the book. And I did that really faithfully, but there are some things like the pooping and peeing part that just don't make a lot of sense, and trying to make it sensible for people so that they can be environmentally sound, but at the same time not get lost out there or not have a bad experience.
Yeah, kind of a practical thing in other words. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So from your perspective, what changes have you noticed from previous years with regards to being at the present Canoecopia?
Well, this just opened and it looks great. A lot of people milling around, getting information and buying stuff. And it's a carnival here. I've always enjoyed my time here. So I haven't noticed a lot of changes. We're starting to see more and more young people, which is exciting, out in the wilderness paddling. And today at Canoecopia, I noticed a lot of younger. It used to be peers. Now there's some young people, and that's really fun.
Yeah. Hey, Happy Camper likes, what does he say? He says, hi, Rob. How does it say? Hi, Rob. Nice hat, by the way. Hope to see you soon.
That's good. Sounds like Kevin Callan. Is that who he is?
Yeah, that's your buddy, Kevin.
Yeah, he's a good buddy. Great guy. And
absolutely.
No one knows the outdoors better than Kevin.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask you this. Do you plan on being back next year to speak at Canoecopia again?
I don't know, CW. I'm living in Colorado now, so I had to drive to Aspen and then fly to Chicago and then fly to Minneapolis to get my books and things, and then drive to Madison. So it has to be pretty special for me to come. I really like Darren. I like what he's doing here.
Yeah.
And I know this is an important year for him, so I felt that I would do it for him. Yeah. He's been good to me, and I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely.
Wow. Will you be doing any other events this year?
This is my only expo, I believe, this year. There's a quiet water sports thing in Wisconsin next week, I think. But I'm going back. The ski season's still got a few weeks left, so I want to get out on the slopes a little bit more before it all shuts down for the season.
Oh, yeah, that sounds fun.
And I was supposed to speak at Kringelfieber, which is a German freestyle canoeing event south of, it's in Bavaria. And that's been postponed year after year after year. And I'm planning to go to Eastern Europe, which is a little bit dicey to begin with. But they just couldn't make up their mind in time, and I'm going to miss that this year. So maybe I'll go to that next year.
Yeah, very cool. Well, so let me ask you this. What kind of personal stuff, personal trips, vacations, that kind of, what do you got planned for this spring and summer, by the way?
Well, Whoa. Yeah, that's Canoecopia.
There you go. Jeez.
For this year, when I was 24 years old, I went into the wilderness of northern Canada, the Northwest Territories, and built a cabin 190 miles from the road. Canoed in, spent an entire year there, lived off fish and caribou, and built this cabin. Didn't even have a radio, and I've always wanted my kids to see it. And a couple of them have, but I have 5 daughters, and I'm hoping to take some of them back this summer to see that old cabin. It's still standing. It's not really habitable. Well, can't really live in it anymore, but it's still there. So that's in the natural lake up in the Canadian far north. So that's a big part of the summer. And I'm going to go see, I've got a couple of brand new grandchildren. And with COVID, I haven't been able to see them and hang out with them. So that's the plan. And they're back in New York and Toronto. So I got a busy summer. Summers are always too short. The older you get, the shorter they seem.
You know, isn't that the truth? It's like, why does it seem like winter lasts forever?
Yeah.
And then summer is just bam, before you know it, it's gone, you know?
Well, the last few years, I've been spending winter cheating nature a little bit and spending winter in either Africa or Australia or South America. So chasing the sun. But this year with COVID, the last 2 years, I've been in Colorado. But we get a lot of sun, even in the short days in Colorado. Been great.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it looks like we have another question from the Happy Camper. He's asking, what's your best moment, worst moment, and best book you enjoyed writing?
Okay, I'm going to start with the last one. The book I enjoyed writing. I liked all my books. I wrote another one this year. Hasn't been published yet, but I loved writing the book about Merlin Carter. He's a Canadian bush pilot. 26,000 hours of flying a float plane in the Canadian North, on rescues, on taking canoeists, government flying, taking Aboriginal people to their trap lines. Just amazing stories, and an old-fashioned single otter. Most of his hours were that, and just a fascinating character. And then he died about 10 years ago, killed by a bear, 200 miles from nowhere.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's just a phenomenal story. I was privileged to do his eulogy in the hockey rink in Hay River, Northwest Territories. The only place big enough to hold all his friends, pilots that he got started that went on to fly for international airlines, Native people that he had endeared, and just a fantastic man. And he really taught me that when you have to choose between truth and kindness, always choose kindness. And
That's
an uncommon man.
I like that.
So,
That makes a lot of sense, you know? Yeah.
Great guy. So I really liked researching that, going to where he was born. I wish I had done some of that stuff before he died, because I didn't know really how he got his start. You know how we're so in the moment sometimes we don't get into our past. So I spent a lot of time with his widow and up in Hay River, Northwest Territories, and doing a lot of the research about the early planes and about his variety of crashes that he experienced over the years. And just a really fun book. So that was my favorite book to write. I've had a lot of experiences with bears myself, and that's one of my favorite things. I like wildlife. It's whether I'm in Africa or Australia or up in the Canadian or American North. I'm fascinated by bears and caribou and the variety of animals that we get to see in the wilderness, undisturbed by basically undisturbed by civilization. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
So I've had a few scares, but I got kind of ice in my veins now. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but nothing scares me anymore.
That's pretty good. That's very good. Here's another question. Rob, favorite book that inspired you to write?
I liked True Grit, a story a young woman wrote about, her father. It's a Western story.
Yeah.
And I really recommend that book. It's inspiring, maybe because I have daughters, but she had some characteristics that I identify with my daughters. It was made into a couple movies, but the book itself is the best, as usual.
Yeah.
Okay.
True Grit. I can't think of anything more important than courage. And True Grit, I like it.
Very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell us about the other 2 books that you wrote?
Yeah, I wrote a book called River Stories, which is a collection of mostly of stories that have been printed in magazines about a variety of river trips, mostly in North America. That was before I started doing a lot of international trips. And I got included both the ones that have been published and a few that were refused, because I think one of my best ones,
Oh, wow.
Fever Runs Through It, I couldn't get published anywhere, but it's in the book and then uncensored. That's the best one. So that's good. And the one people often say it's my best book, but it was my first book. So you hate to have people tell you your best book is your first book. I think you improve a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Oh, no.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's called Daughter, Father, Canoe.
Yeah.
And it's a story that I took each of my daughters when they turned 14 on lengthy canoe trips. And my oldest daughter, Laura, I took her down the Snowdrift River in the Canadian Northwest Territories for a 4-week canoe trip, just father and daughter. And that chronicles that, but it has a lot more than that. It also reflects on some of the people and the adventures I had when I lived in the Northwest Territories for 9 years. So that's a good book, a good read for me. Sometimes I'll just sit down and reread it. As you get old, you start to forget things, and it's good to be a writer. You can remember what happened.
Yeah. You sent me that book, and I read that book. Yeah, that was a very, very good book.
Good.
I like that. I appreciate you sending that to me. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you here, speaking of your books, where can our audience go to follow you and to purchase each of those books, Rob?
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder, and most of the books are out of print. River Stories is still in print, and it can be ordered. It can be ordered directly from the publisher, but I have a stock of books because I haven't been going to these shows.
Mm-hmm.
So I would prefer you order directly from me, and that's robkesselring.com. robkesselring.com. I have a blog in there, and all the books are in there, and I still have all my books. If you go to the publisher, you can get the River Stories and Berlin Carter, but you can't get Daughter, Father, Canoe. So go to my website. I can give you a deal there too. I'm trying to get out of this whole business and just kind of enjoy the next 10 years without doing a lot of book sales. But I'm always happy. I get a lot of emails of inquiries about trips, and I'm always happy to help with maps and with my suggestions. It's just exciting that so many people are kind of pushing the envelope and going where people have never gone before. I like that.
I think that is
Yeah,
cool.
that is amazing.
Absolutely.
So is there anything else that you would like to share with us before you go?
Well, I think this is a really grateful that I was included in your interview list. I know you have a lot of distinguished people you're interviewing, and I think your show, your radio show, is really provides an important service.
Oh,
and
thank you.
There are a lot of novices out there. I know Cliff Jacobson is big on this too, that really get into trouble or have an unpleasant experience just because they don't have the basics.
Yeah.
And some of the skills and stuff that you can learn close to home will help you be a lot safer out. But the last thing I'd like to say is the woods, the wilderness, is a pretty safe place. I'm never nervous out there. And if you'd be surprised. People think you're going off into this uncharted territory, and it would be a real scary experience. And I'm more comfortable in the middle of nowhere than I am in a city. So I think that you can learn that things like rapids and bears and mountain lions and moose are not that scary. They're just part of the fabric of nature. And the more you can embrace it and the less you barricade from it, the more you're going to enjoy and feel at peace. And that's certainly, I go to the wilderness to feel at peace.
Yes, it is such a peaceful place.
Yeah. I can't agree with you more. Feeling safer in the woods than you do in the city, especially some of the cities that I'm thinking of, like Chicago and New York. And so, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that, Rob. I'm going to ask you this. Before I let you go, because it seems like you just got here. So I'm going to ask you a question. You told us a story. You shared with us a story when you were on the camping show the last time about a bear that you encountered. And it was a very interesting story. Do you recall the one you shared with us?
Boy, I've had so many bear stories. I'm not sure which one I shared.
I think it was about you. Well, you have had a lot of interesting things. Let's just go there real quickly.
I had one this summer. I'm pretty sure this was after I talked to you.
Okay.
I had one this summer where Sue, my paddling partner, we were doing a run down the Noatak River in Arctic Alaska. And we were coming down the river, only about 35, 40 feet wide at the most. And I said, hey, there's a bear up in front of us on the shore. And Sue said, yeah, I see 2 bears. And I said, you see 2? And then I said, oh, there's 3. And there was a mother on the left-hand shore and 2 cubs on the right-hand shore. And we're going right down. We're going to go right between them. And so we both agreed it was time to back paddle and decide what to do next. And they weren't aware we were there, but you really never want to come between cubs and the mother. Bears are pretty timid creatures, but they're very protective at the same time. So we saw these 2 bears, and we back paddled a little bit, but the current is strong. We weren't really going. We couldn't go to shore. We would have been too close to either of them. So I just gave a hoop, and the female looked up and saw me, and then swam back across the river and joined her 2 cubs, and we went flying by them, paddling as hard as we could. And that was the Park Service says never get closer than 200 yards from a bear.
Yeah.
We frequently. What do you do when you come around the bend of a river and there's a bear standing in the middle of the river? You just you got to adapt.
Yeah, there's no choice then. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I told you about some scarier stories, but that's a nice, pleasant one.
Yeah, that is a pleasant one. Because I remember the other one. There was something about you came face to face with a bear, and I forget how that went, but I remember the outcome is you're still here with us.
That's right.
That's the most important thing.
And that's the usual outcome.
Yeah.
With I shared that my best friend was killed by a bear. That's a very rare occurrence. Most bears are not predatory. There was this short-faced bear that roamed North America 6,000 years ago that scared the heck out of all the bears.
Oh.
And they still remember that in their DNA.
Oh, wow.
And so bears are basically pretty timid creatures. And if you
Yeah.
talk to them, you have to scare them a little bit. Maybe even sometimes there's something that hurts them a little bit. They then tend to stay away. And we just run into some bears that get used to getting into campers' food, and they get habituated, and then they hang around a lot, and that can be kind of creepy, but not necessarily very dangerous. Just never let them get your food. That's the one way we can be not part of the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't make it easy for them if accessible at all, I would say. Yeah, for sure. Jesse, go ahead. You got a...
Yeah, we have another question from Casey Happy Camper. 3 top favorite moments at Canoecopia, like real, I don't want to forget that moment in my life.
Is this Kevin again?
It is Kevin.
Oh, God, Kevin.
3 top favorite. I love it. So there must be a lot of favorites up there if you're asking for just 3.
Oh, some of them I can't really share. So
just take out the dirty words. We could put the rest of it up.
Well, there's this one woman. No, I'm not going to go there. No, Kevin, I don't know. I watching Kevin do some of his shows. He's such a maniac on stage. That's always fun.
Yeah.
And I know. One time I bunked with Cliff Jacobson, the legend, and we both had a teaching background. Mm-hmm. And here we put in a hard day at Canoecopia, and then we spent all night talking about the problems in education and schools and teaching kids. And that was early on in my relationship with Cliff, and it was just a fascinating night. Of course, made the next day kind of tough, but we just couldn't go to sleep. We just talked all night. Yeah, so that's probably the most memorable time I've had at Canoecopia.
That was it. Oh, that was here. That story that had happened here.
Yeah, that was here. Yeah, we bunked together.
Now let me ask you a question.
Uh-huh.
Was there any scotch involved in that conversation?
Not on my part, but likely on Cliff's part.
And I wonder, the more scotch you had, the better the conversation got, or the more interesting it got, perhaps.
Yeah, Cliff likes his little toddy at night. Yeah, no doubt about that.
He's not alone. I enjoy that too. But usually when I had a few of those, the conversation gets a little abstract. What is that? Digress. That sort of thing.
Cliff is 81 years old, but he's as lucid as a 24-year-old man.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what. We really enjoyed having you on here, and we'd both like to thank you, Rob, for being our guest here today.
Well, I want to thank you, and I hope you have a good time these 3 days at Canoecopia.
Well, thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Very good.
Yes, thank you. And we'd also like to thank our sponsors, Rutabaga Paddle Sports, for bringing you this special broadcast.
Yeah.
Be sure to tune in for our next broadcast at 8 p.m. with our special guest, Darren Bush.
Until then, thank you for tuning in to our special broadcast, Canoecopia 2022.
This is C.W. Getz
and Jesse Meany,
reminding you,
learn more,
do more. Right? See you at 8 o'clock.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.